Welcome to The Explainer. It's early 2026, and when we talk about SpaceX, we're not just talking about a company that's leading the space race. They're running a whole different race entirely. Today, we're going to unpack how their insane dominance in orbit led to a wild new vision that, has a lot less to do with Mars than you might think, and way more to do with AI.
To really get where SpaceX is going, you first have to understand just how dominant they are right now. Let's just put a number on it, 95%. That's how many of America's orbital launches SpaceX handled back in 2024. And look, that's not just a big market share. That is basically a monopoly on America's access to space.
So how did they actually pull this off? Well, it all boils down to one single really disruptive idea: reusability. They made their rockets reusable to a degree that, honestly, just left the competition in the dust, financially speaking.
And this is where that strategy completely changes the game. I mean, just look at these numbers. A Falcon 9 launch cost about $67 million. Now look at their competitors. You're talking anywhere from $160 million to, get this, $450 million for a similar rocket. SpaceX isn't just a little cheaper. They are playing a totally different sport in a totally different league.
And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Even their competitors, folks like Peter Beck, the CEO of Rocket Lab, they'll tell you straight up, the mix of low cost, the crazy speed they launch at, and how reliable they are, it's created a market of one.
The stats that back all this up are, well, they're just mind-blowing. Think about it. A success rate of over 97% on landing their boosters. They've flown a single booster to space and back 32 times, and they can get a launch pod ready for the next flight in just under 2 days. This isn't a fluke. It's a well-oiled, relentless machine.
Okay, so you have this incredible, unmatched power to launch pretty much anything you want, whenever you want. What do you do with it? Well, you build your own massive utility in the sky. You build Starlink.
And when I say massive, I mean it. The sheer scale here is hard to wrap your head around. By early 2026, we're talking over 9,600 active satellites. Now, let me be super clear about what that means. That isn't just a lot of satellites. That's the vast majority of all working satellites orbiting our planet right now. And it's not just a technical marvel. It's become the financial core of the company. Projections for 2025 showed that Starlink was on track to bring in a whopping 80% of all of SpaceX's revenue. So yeah, this is not some side hustle. It is the cash engine that's paying for everything else.
And Starlink's whole purpose has really grown. It started as a way to get internet to people in rural areas, right? But now it's becoming this fundamental piece of global infrastructure. It's connecting everything from jumbo jets and container ships to military forces out in the field. But here's the thing. To really kick things into high gear and serve more people in crowded cities, the network needs a huge upgrade. The next version of their satellite, the V3, has more than 10 times the power of the current ones. But there's a problem, a big one. It's just too big and too heavy to launch on a Falcon 9.
And that is the problem Starship was designed to solve. This is the beast, the fully reusable, next-gen rocket that makes even the super reliable Falcon 9 look kind of small. I mean, the jump in what this thing can do is it's staggering. A Falcon 9, right? It can get about 17 tons to orbit. Starship, it's designed for around 100 tons. That is almost a 6 times increase in pure lifting muscle.
Okay, so what does that lift power actually mean for Starlink? Let's break it down. One single launch of Starship, carrying those new V3 satellites, adds 60 terabits per second of capacity to the network. To get that same amount of bandwidth with a Falcon 9, you would need to launch more than 20 times. All of that power now in just one flight. And this right here is maybe the most important takeaway. Starship doesn't just make space cheaper, it completely changes the rules of the game. For decades, the main question for engineers was, how can we make this lighter to fit on the rocket? Now the question is, what amazing things can we build now that mass is basically no longer an issue? And the answer, as it turned out, wasn't just go to Mars.
For as long as anyone can remember, the goal, the grand vision, the whole point of SpaceX was one thing: Mars. But then, in early 2026, that vision got a massive public rewrite. Suddenly, those really ambitious timelines for putting boots on Mars started to slide. The goal of 2026 got pushed to maybe 2029 or even 2031.
And this wasn't just a simple delay. It was a sign that something fundamental was changing inside the company.
So why? Why the big shift in focus? Why move away from the one goal that had defined the company for years?
Well, the public reason from Elon Musk was pretty straightforward. He said a self-sustaining city on the moon was something they could pull off in less than 10 years, whereas Mars, that was a 20-year project. So the moon became the faster, more practical first step. But that wasn't the full picture.
The real reason? The bombshell that changed everything dropped in February 2026. A huge corporate announcement. SpaceX was merging with xAI, Musk's other big venture in artificial intelligence.
And we're not talking about a small deal here. This merger created a new company valued at a mind-boggling $1.25 trillion. It fused the world's most dominant aerospace company with a cutting-edge AI lab.
And with that move, the new, true, and incredibly audacious goal was finally revealed. The plan wasn't just to build an internet service anymore. It was to use Starship's incredible lifting power to build giant data centers in orbit. A whole constellation of satellites that would act as a massive space-based supercomputer, where cooling is basically free in the vacuum of space.
And suddenly, the new grand vision clicked into place. The idea was to use this orbital AI supercomputer to generate absolutely massive amounts of revenue. The profits from that space-based AI would then pay for everything else, the moon base, and eventually that city on Mars. In other words, AI was now the key to funding humanity's expansion into the solar system. So this changes everything. SpaceX isn't just a rocket company anymore. It's this new kind of vertically integrated beast, part aerospace, part AI giant. And that leaves us with one final, really big question to think about. What happens to our world when one company not only holds the keys to orbit, but also builds the next generation of supercomputers in space?